guys, welcome back to Canary's Corner. So today I am going to be doing my Wyatt Sick video. I just wanted to say a very quick thank you to all of those who have supported me, been here from the very beginning. I appreciate all the love, the support, and most importantly, I appreciate you guys just being, patient. Just as a whole, you guys have been really patient for this video specifically, and just patient with me as a whole. So thank you thank you very much. And without further ado, let's get into the Wyatt Sick video. In order to understand their mission as a whole, you have to understand them just a little bit more. So in the beginning, we're going to be going over the Wyatt Sick family and their members, and then at the end, we are going to be going over their mission and who their possible targets are and what I think they're going to be doing with Alexa Bliss. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. So in order to understand the Wyatt Sick and their mission, you must first understand them and why they decided to group as a family. Because when we think of family, we think of like-minded people and people who are there for us no matter what. You can turn to them and they're always going to be there. That's what we kind of lump family in with, something like that. Now, every family has a leader, and every family has a monarch. Every family has the mom, and every family has a dad. But within this family, there's no mom and there's no dad. But there is the patriarch, and then there is the matriarch. And a little bit, we will be going over who I think that will be within the Wyatt Sick. So in order to understand them, I will be giving a rundown of the lore as a whole. So first off, we have Uncle Howdy. So Uncle Howdy, originally being the dream entity that Bray Wyatt would see in childhood and then saw a little bit more as he was growing up, and then he decided to make him real. Uncle Howdy was physically unveiled to us for the first time, I believe it was October 8th, 2022, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think it is October 8th. And we saw him kind of go back and forth with Bray Wyatt. We saw him go back and forth for a little bit on who was actually in control and who wasn't. Ultimately, Uncle Howdy gaining the control over Bray as time went on. And then we saw him slowly start to pick away at Alexa Bliss's psyche with either the moth flashing in the background, or as the story would intensify, little vignettes of him saying, "Are you really in control? Who's really in control here?" Whereas the whole world thought it was her, in all reality, it was him. He was in control the entire time. But a little bit more on her later. And then, unfortunately, the unthinkable happened. We lost Bray Wyatt, so we thought that we would never see Uncle Howdy or anything like this, ever again. Then, at the end of the Wyatt documentary, Bray Wyatt's documentary video, we got a little snippet of Uncle Howdy. So that's how we knew that he was coming back and that this legacy was going to continue. How it was going to continue, we didn't know. What they were going to do, we had no clue, because at that point in time, no QR codes or anything like that were released. Then as the months went on, we were given codes, clues, messages to decipher, a phone number to call, journal entries to follow, thus making some of us amateur detectives and sleuths. I, myself included, gave myself the moniker Detective Canary, because for those months I was jotting down journal entries, following everything, QR codes, all of that. Now I know I said I would show the journal in this video, but there's just personal things written on the sides of them for notes that I just don't feel comfortable sharing, so I'm not going to. Now I will be transferring all of the QR codes into a different notebook, so that way in a different video, because this lore is going to keep continuing, I can show you guys. But I just wanted to give a little note on that. Then those whoops, I lost my place. Then as the months came to a close, all but one of the family members were revealed. Because if you guys think back to this specifically, there was something that was released either on a Monday night or Friday night. I believe it was a Monday night. And it was just like, you scan the QR code and then it was just a bunch of letters and numbers. But you were able to pick out the first letter of each name. So it was a hint at who was going to be in the Wyatt Six. And now that's a perfect segue into who the members of the Wyatt Six are now and why are they members. So we have Nikki, who is portraying now Sister Abigail. Now, when we thought of Sister Abigail as the puppet, she was the mean one. She was the one that was always cursing. She was the one that was always told to be nice. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Nikki. But if we're thinking in terms of the family and why she's there, we have to think about her as a whole. And towards the end of her sabbatical hiatus, whatever you want to call it, before she came back with the Wyatt Six. Now, the character we saw Nikki cross in before she was part of the Wyatt Six was this lost, lonely, friendless person who had no friends. And she even said, I believe it was to Candace, that all her friends are gone, that she has no one, and she was alone. And then more so, we would see her stalk Candace as the weeks went on. But as Candace got tired of it, she'd tell her to leave, she'd tell her to go, she didn't want her around. So then we saw Nikki slowly start staring into the void. We just saw her staring into a void, much like Alexa Bliss did when she was entranced by the fiend. So it was very, very remnant of that. Now, in the little snippet that was released, I think a month or two later, it said that she was staring into a void, hoping for something or somebody to answer her plea, her lonely pleas. Now, was it the something or someone she wanted? We don't know. But was that something or somebody that answered? Was it better than what she expected or even hoped for? I'm going to go with yes. Because now she has a new purpose, a new identity, a new sense of self. And above all else, she has a new family. She has people she can turn to. She has friends, which is what she didn't have before. Which is a perfect segue into our next person, which is Eric Redbeard, who plays Ramblin' Rabbit. Now, normally when we think of Ramblin' Rabbit, we think of the rabbit talks nonstop. It's the one that's always that was getting clapped in this fun house all the time by Bray Wyatt. It was always the one that was getting murked, all of that. But now we see them in human forms. And let me just say, this version is less nightmare fuel than the original humanoid version of Ramblin' Rabbit. Because that version, one, looked like it was on it took way too many energy drinks, drank way too many, and was on a 5-hour energy. It was straight nightmare fuel and looks like me on a Monday, basically. But that brings us to the new version of Ramblin' Rabbit. Eric Redbeard didn't really ramble, but he did talk a lot when he was with the Wyatt family and just as a whole. So it makes perfect sense. But you also, now, does he fit in the family? Well, you have to think of the two most profound losses that he has experienced, not even 3 years apart from each other. Eric knows a profound sense of loss, of isolation, and of pain. And when you don't deal with pain, or you don't have like-minded people who are going through what you're going through, you become angry, you lash out, and then you start to isolate because you realize what you're doing isn't probably right. So you isolate yourself. And then as time goes on, isolation is all that you know. So the Wyatt family, and I have drawn parallels to it all the time. The Wyatt family is like a cult almost, because a cult promotes a sense of family. It promotes a sense of feeling heard, feeling seen, feeling safe. Now, does the cult leader always have the best interest of everybody in mind? No, it's normally their best interest in mind, and then they know that whatever they decide to do, the family or the cult will follow. So until Uncle Howdy, now within this family, you have to think, who else felt the most profound sense of loss too? And that would be none other than Bo Dallas, aka Uncle Howdy. But since, just drawing to what the therapy videos or the VHS tapes that Nikki drops off to Michael Cole every Monday, it seems like they are separating the person and the puppet and then making them one. So we will get more details on why each of the family members are with the Wyatt Six right now. But I'm only giving all the information that I have as of right now. So for all I know, it could change, or it could even further my point. So it's going to be interesting to see. But what we know now is that he was alone, he was sad, and he felt like nobody understood him. Well, Bo Dallas understands how he feels. Bo Dallas felt sad, alone, and like no one would ever understand when he lost his brother. So when you put them together, it just makes for this awe-inspiring group, which is what we're seeing. It makes it more captivating. It makes it more jaw-dropping. It makes it more sentimental. It makes it more heart-wrenching. Like, it gives you all the emotions in one. It makes you feel their pain. So in a way, even though we all know that we're not the unequivocal six members, it makes us feel like we're part of the family as well. So I can only imagine, like, putting themselves in their character mode, how it must feel to not be alone, to not be as upset or sad or grief-stricken, because you're around people that are going through the exact same thing, and you guys now making your whole sense of purpose as a group to go and clap anybody and everybody who has betrayed, wronged, lied to, or turned on a family member or group member, if we're talking in terms of World of Wrestling. But groups, factions, and stuff like that are also almost always referred to as families. Don't quote me on that, but you can if you want. Now that brings us to none other than Joe Gacy. Now, Joe was the leader of his cult, or his faction, Schism, 4 roots, 1 tree. So I think it was actually perfect to put him there, because he knows what it's like to be part of that. He knows what it's like to be a part of something that only they see the objective, and it's clear and it makes sense and it's not out there and it's not wild. Because if you think of Schism, it's almost very remnant to what we're seeing now, except it was a little less intense. But now we're seeing more of that. We're seeing more of a family representation like we did with Schism. When you take somebody's family away from them, or friends that were like family, you become angry, lost, without a family, without a sense of purpose. You have no identity anymore, because your whole identity was to lead them. But now he has no sense of identity. But like I said before, making them the puppets gave them a new sense of identity, and each of them now has a different identity in which they can correspond with. Joe Gacy being Huskus the pig, ultimately being the more husky one out of all of them, does make sense. Making him the one where he feels so lost, but he's so angry, until Uncle Howdy gave him a new purpose, a new identity, a new sense of living. So if If we think about Joe Gacy, he felt like he had no purpose because he had no family and he didn't have schism. But now he has the Wyatt Sick. And we can see that he's maybe just a little bit more, timid. But we haven't heard them talk. We haven't heard them do anything like that. All we've seen is just them menacingly standing there. So again, this is only information that I know as of right now. And then now we're going to, that's a perfect segue into Dexter. Dexter, also a loner, he also lost a family. None other than, you guessed it, the Way. Much like a buzzard, Dexter also stalks his prey. We've seen that several times we saw it with Indy, and then we saw it more so with The Miz when he was on Raw, and then when he was with the Way, we did see that. Also, like a buzzard, he strikes and perfectly pinpoints the striking position with perfect accuracy almost every single time. Like a buzzard, they also perch themselves to look and watch for prey, which is exactly what we saw Dexter do when the Wyatt Sick unveiled on June 17th. We saw that. We saw him perched up in gorilla, sitting there crisscross, just looking at everything that he did. And that's what buzzards do when they're looking for prey. So that tells me, was he looking for somebody that was supposed to be there that wasn't there? Don't know. But again, we've never heard them talk. We don't know a whole bunch about what's happening with them. All we know is we're going to get a little bit more week after week with these VHS vignettes that they shot. All right, now that's a perfect segue into their mission. Their mission was to take out, or is to take out anybody and everybody that has turned on, betrayed, lied to, cheated, or basically made them come up short or exploited it for personal gain. So basically anybody who was in a faction that turned on somebody. Now, that opens up a lot of avenues because there are so many people that have wronged their group, their tag team partner, or their family faction as a whole for personal gain because they felt like they weren't doing enough. Now, there are plenty of people that I believe could get clapped by the Wyatt Sick. Now, as of right now, we know no females are getting clapped, getting stalked, none of that as of right now. And here's why. So there's still that very big open she or the her journal entry that everybody is still talking about. And for good reason. Because within that, it explains that he opened the door. So only he can open the door, but only she can go through. And then if you guys go back to the unveiling video of the Wyatt Sick, nobody walked through the door when they came back around. Nobody did. Only one person came out of the door, but nobody walked through it. Everybody walked around it. So that tells me that they are very much sticking to this part of the story that says, I can only open the door. Only she can choose to walk through the door. Now that she is most likely going to be none other than Little Miss Bliss herself, Alexa Bliss, because she is the only female within that roster that makes sense and that has this many ties to the group. And she has a tie with one member specifically. Two. But if we're thinking in terms of betrayal, it would be the perfect first female for them to go after. Because as of right now, we know they're only going after Gable. But we've seen a lot of Alexa Bliss's training, a lot of her practicing Twisted Bliss, a lot of just her training to come back as a whole. Now, if she is going to be the very first female target, here's a little rundown on why, in case you guys have forgotten. Alexa Bliss ultimately turned on The Fiend, and ultimately, before that, turned on her best friend, Nikki Cross. She turned on The Fiend during, I believe it was WrestleMania 37. Yeah, right after the Thunderdome era, when we were all just allowed to come back to live events. That WrestleMania, she turned on him. And she said it was because Lily didn't like him. Now, if you guys think in terms of the biblical sense, there was always the Queen of Hell. None other than Lilith herself. So I think it was perfect that they had, at that point in time, which I didn't see the vision until now, like fully see it. Every great ruler has one female behind them. Now, the female Fiend elevated the Fiend already because there was a female counterpart to him. We had never seen that before. So in order to stick true to the lore and the story, it has to be Alexa because she turned on somebody and she turned on Nikki. She somewhat did it for personal gain because she got to know herself a little bit better. She got to know that dark portion of herself. But ultimately, she was not in control. And that's something that Alexa Bliss has had a lot of her entire wrestling career, was control. She controlled a lot of things when she was the goddess. She had her own talk show. A lot of people speculated that she turned on Nikki even before that. But she ultimately turned on Nikki when Nikki asked during one of the segments when she was still, is she going to be with Bray? Is she not? Nikki said, who's it going to be? Is it going to be me or him? And she was picking roses. She was picking the petals off the roses. And she said, him. And then blew the petals out of her hand. So if they're taking, like I had said before about a whole bunch of other storylines, if they're taking the past, if they're getting a time machine and going all the way back and then taking things and then saying, okay, this is perfect fuel for a story now, let's take it and use it. It wouldn't be the first time they've done this, and it wouldn't be the first time that they've gone back in a lore for Bray Wyatt or for the storytelling or now for the Wyatt Six. Other people, I believe, that would most likely be getting clapped. We already know that Gable is. He's already a target because of Alpha Academy. You also have Gunther and Kaiser for turning on Vincenzi. I'm not sure how you say that. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that. You have the OG bloodline. The Roman Reigns mentally and emotionally abusing the twins. You have Jay for turning on Roman and betraying the bloodline. You have Jimmy turning on Jay. You have Damage Control turning on Bailey. And it looks like possibly Kairi Sane. You also got to think that Io disposes of people when she feels like now they're not doing enough. And you can see that with all of her past vignettes that have said, or backstage interviews that says Damage Control needs to change or I'll change it. Then you have Alexa Bliss for turning on The Fiend and Nikki Cross. Shayna Baszler for betraying Nia Jax and breaking her elbow or arm. You have Dom for betraying his father and his family as a whole. You had also betraying his new family, the Judgment Day and Rhea Ripley. You also have Santos Escobar for turning on Rey Mysterio. You also have Carlito for betraying the LWO and Rey Mysterio, his family. Now, a lot of people are saying that Carlito might be a reach, but really it's not. If they're clapping people for betrayal, lies, or anything, he's most likely going to get it too. You have Solo Sikoa, which is exploiting the family name and exploiting the tribal chief himself, taking his spot when nobody else was crowned tribal chief. Because if you think in terms of, they never had ritual combat to see who would become, or they never had tribal combat to see who would become the new head of the table. So as far as that's concerned, Roman Reigns is still the head of the table and always will be head of the table in my book. Now, a lot of people that say was a reach is Cody Rhodes, but Cody Rhodes is not. Cody Rhodes is the prodigal son. Cody Rhodes also used his dad's name to further the storyline with Roman Reigns and The Rock, saying he's not just there's not just one royal family. Because if you guys think in terms of that, he used Dusty's name a whole lot. He is also the prodigal son that they were talking about. Chad, I don't believe, is the prodigal son, and I don't believe that he's top of the mountain. Now, when we think top of the mountain, we think very top of the food chain, the champions, the biggest, baddest champions that we have. And who is one of the biggest champions we have right now? Cody Rhodes. Because if you think of everybody else, nobody else would be able to tie to it like that, but he can. So, in terms of that, that's what I believe. That's who I think they'll be going after in time. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what new details emerge and what new things come out when it comes to the Wyatt Six. But thank you so much. And I think that this video, this video took me so many times to do, but I wanted to make sure that was perfect. And I hope you guys were able to, follow along. It all made sense and I wasn't rambling. So all right, you guys, bye.